Well, this was completely unexpected. But last night, we had a defection from the Conservatives over to Labour. This was, of course, quite a senior top Tory in many ways. The ex-health minister, Dan Poulter, has defected now, saying that the Conservatives have far too become a nationalist party of the right. And I just want to read something that he has said here, and he's part of his defection and why he sort of chose to defect. So he said that Liz Truss had completely shattered she shattered the moment for the moderates in his party and for any middle ground voters. It is very difficult to forget, he said, that adding to his constituents had now become directly poorer as a result of Truss's mistakes on the economy. The Conservative Party's values have changed over the past 8 years, he said. The values of the Conservative Party under David Cameron were entirely different values and priorities, and they were very different. David Cameron would have undoubtedly had a very strong commitment to the NHS. Since he ceased being Prime Minister 8 years ago, the health service has now ceased to be an area of priority for the Conservative Party, and this is now showing in the strain of the front line and the deterioration of care for patients. So it said, it feels to me that the Tory party has now gone from being a very pragmatic, centrist, centre-right party, which focused on and understood the importance of public services and the state to deliver certain things. He had that now compassionate outlook on these very key issues. It is now gone from that and what feels like it has now become a nationalist party of the right, which is more of what we see in Europe. So ultimately, again, his big reason why he has left. One of the things that Labour has said, that he's going to sort of become an advisor because he works part-time as a doctor on the front lines, and that's also part of his reason for leaving. He has had first-time hand experience of what has gone on here, and he gets that 100% right. Of the Tory party has shifted completely from what it used to be under David Cameron. And that is very, very obvious. People will say, oh, no, it hasn't changed. But unless you really do follow politics, you can see that change. You can see and feel that change now. And where you've got someone like this switching over to the Labour Party, it makes a complete mockery. And honestly, anyone who still says that Labour and the Tories are the same party, maybe you should be questioning their political analysis. That's all I'm going to say on that. But once again, you have a very clear now problem for Sunak. This, of course, happening last night. And we've talked about before that now the momentum is starting to gather. That snowball thrown off the top of the mountain builds momentum more and more and more till it becomes an avalanche. And by that time, you can do nothing to stop it. Absolutely nothing. And remember, we've talked about this before as well. Sunak has one big card he can play. And that is, if you do not settle down, if you do not start falling into line, if you do not, stop behaving, but we've been through this before, many of these Tory MPs have no more reason to be loyal anymore whatsoever. So how big that threat is going to be is, well, we'll wait to see. And of course, we had to sort of wait to see if Sunak would deploy this threat. Then that, of course, is a threat of a general election. Remember, you only get to do this once. Because if you say it and they cause trouble and you do not go to a general election, then saying that again has no meaning whatsoever. And guess what happened today that we are seeing? Threat of a summer poll is a tactic now to ward off a Sunak revolt, say senior Tories. So officially now, Sunak has deployed this as a threat. If you do not fall into line, if you do not behave yourselves, I'm going to call a general election. Damn what the polls say. we are going now because of you guys. Because you can't fall into line. Only gets to do this once. Because if not, after that, the threat is just non-existent. Non-existent whatsoever. So before we go more into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a foundation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, you can click the like, click the share button. There's the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel. So let's go on into this, coming from The Guardian this morning. The threat of a summer poll, a tactic to ward off a Sunak revolt, say senior Tories. So senior Tories now believe that the threat of a summer general election is being used by Downing Street to defer a rebellion against Rishi Sunak's leadership before a perilous set of local elections this week. And we're going to see how all this plays out, because remember, the polls are on Thursday. We'll see what happens through Friday. We'll see what happens through the weekend. But ultimately, many of these Tory MPs are not going to be very, very happy. The polls are not looking good. They are looking like they're going to be an absolute disaster. Very, very, very much so. And now there's rumors that Monday or Tuesday, Sunak might come out and say, we're going to a general election. So something could happen Monday or Tuesday. We could find out when a general election is, maybe within this week, maybe early next week. All depends what's going to happen. We'll see. We'll find out soon, I suppose. It's all to play for. You know, anything could happen in the next 48 hours, essentially. So Westminster has now been abuzz with rumours of an early election, despite the persistent double-digit lead that Labour has now enjoyed in the polls. While Downing Street sources have played down the speculation of an imminent announcement from Sunak, influential MPs in number 10 is now holding open the possibility of an early election to keep rebellious colleagues in check. Remember, you can only do this once. And what reason do these rebellious people have to be loyal to sort of be brought into check? There's nothing. Sunak has deployed nothing to try and keep these people in check. Because we've said it before, we'll say it again, he is an incredibly weak leader on this front. And he just keeps on demonstrating that over and over again. So this is what a source said. If the Prime Minister went to the palace and said, this is just hopeless and this is not going to get any better, we just need to go to the country, we would end up going to the country, said one influential Tory. This will act as a discipline on colleagues. Obviously, some would like an election, but the vast majority would not. And here's the thing, what's going to change between now and, I don't know, January the 25th? Nothing substantial is changing. Nothing is going to change the polls. The Rwanda bill has already passed. It hasn't had any shift in the poll numbers. We already know the plan as is not going to work. It's been explained. Even Rishi Sunak, this is something from the Boris Johnson years, even Sunak has had huge reservations about this himself when he heard about the plan. He knows it's not going to work. They are done. They are done, and we just have now a zombie parliament. And they are now just waiting out as long as they can in the vain hope something might happen. But what that is, who knows? But ultimately, it's not going to be caused by anything that Sunak does. So while the mood among many Tory MPs is largely one of resignation rather than agitation against Sunak, a wipeout this week, including losses for Ben Houchen in the Tees Valley mayoral race and Andy Street in the West Midlands, could ignite an attempt to remove the Prime Minister. That's why I've said I want to see Ben Houchen gone, but if both those people go, that is going to be a very, very big sign on that. The election analyst does believe that the Tories could lose as many as over half their council seats that they are trying to defend this week. Most of the seats were the last contested back in 2021 when the government was riding high and enjoying the poll bounce for the COVID vaccine rollout. how quickly things have now changed. How quickly things have now changed. Uh, those heady days of when nothing seemed to be able to bring Boris down. Well, here we are now in 2024. What a difference it makes. So this effort is trying to shore up Sunak has already begun, including a fury of activity that saw him pledge to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Bear in mind, when he did the budget, he said, no, there's going to be no defence spending. He's now given in on this. Kind of bizarre, but there you go. But at least, again, I've said I'm an advocate for keeping sort of a high defence spending, it being like this. So, you know, I suppose it's good. Helps us to support Ukraine more. But I've said and advocated, and I've said before in the past, why I think it should be 4% to help rebuild a lot of our capacity when it comes to that. But that's another topic for another video, maybe. Cabinet figures, also now including Defence Secretary Grant Shapps and the Home Secretary James Cleverly, have also spoken out against any political move against Sunak. As we saw, James Cleverly doesn't really going to mean a lot. Like I say, what do these you know rebels have to be loyal for? An election could happen 2-3 weeks from now. They all know there's an election coming. There's still nothing to keep them in check. Many of them know that they're potentially going to lose their seats. Why do they have to be loyal? Many of them know that they've been abandoned in a potential upcoming general election. So why do they have to be loyal? You know? Matt Warnham, the deputy chairman of the Conservative One Nation group, told The Observer that party discipline must now kick in. The Conservative Party has always been a broad church. It has always had the most successful party in electoral history because of that, not despite it, he said. Supporters want us to unite against the genuine and underestimate the threats to the economy and public services of a Labour government. Floating voters need us so that they can address the real opportunities available at the ballot box. Well, they've stopped being a broad church a long time ago. Boris Johnson and even Liz Truss have seen to that, and there's been no attempt to move back to that broad church offering. That was what David Cameron so successfully managed to do back during his tenure. That's now gone. So, divided parties are doomed to opposition, and we must come together to find pragmatic solutions to the challenges, domestically and globally, that we now face today. We know that Keir Starmer's Labour Party are simply not up to that task. It seems completely opposite, considering that you guys have had 14 years to address these challenges domestically and globally, and yet you haven't really achieved any of that stuff. So, you know, we'll see if it will. There's no chance of unity happening. There is no chance of unity happening at all. The Conservative Party is just so fractured, and if Sunak, they would have to get a leader that is willing to really sort of crack some heads together. And Sunak is not that type of leader to be able to do that. And I don't think there's really any Tory MP currently at the moment that is willing to start going and cracking some serious heads, trying to start and instill that party discipline. Otherwise, they would have stepped forward long ago by now. But there you go. So, despite calls for unity, senior figures now believe that Sunak is at the helm of a party now more divided than it was before Labour's landslide victory under Tony Blair. One former minister said the party discipline was now even worse than in 1997. They don't seem to want to group around Sunak. They said the handicap is that he wasn't elected by party members. He took over in circumstances of the post-Johnson, post-Truss. No party leader has been quite in that situation. Some people are saying, well, what's the point of being loyal? What have I been saying throughout all this video? There is no point to be loyal to Sunak. There is nothing to be loyal. He has not instilled any loyalty whatsoever. And this is a classic sign of an incredibly bad leader. So, one advantage for the Prime Minister is that the plotting against him has not said to be either fully formed or is particularly organised. Letters of no confidence from over 52 MPs are required to trigger a vote on Sunak's leadership, and there is no evidence of anywhere near that number are now considering such a move. However, One hardened group of rebels will agitate against Sunak after local election results. And like I say, let them fight. Let them fight, because oh boy, Friday and that weekend is going to be so fun to watch. One former minister said that there was now very little discernible appetite for a move against Sunak, partly because morale was so low. People know they're going to go down. That's all that they all do. It's just a question of what is best. Looking forward, they said, that's all about having the best campaign that you can try and make sure that you win enough seats to be a credible opposition. That is the basic foundation. If we lose that, then we're in real trouble. Bear in mind, a lot of polls do put them not being in that credible opposition, and that they need to mean to be a credible opposition. They need to at least maintain more than 100 seats. I've said before many times, I think the results are going to be anywhere between 120 to 80. That's what I'm basing on. If you look at all the polls that have come out, I'm basing it on those polls. That's my rough estimate. If they lose more than that, great. If they lose so many seats that the Democrats become the main party of opposition, even better. But there you go. So, Downing Street sources have now dismissed the claims that Sunak would call an early election imminently, while the Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden is understood to have been discussing the idea of a summer poll. The biggest figures in number 10, including the campaign director Isaac Levidow and Chief of Staff Liam Booth Smith, are all said to be advocating an election in the late autumn to try and give the economy more time to show signs of recovery. And what are you waiting for? What could happen between now and then? Even if the economy does recover, is that going to really bring voters back to you? No, absolutely not. Because what has Sunak really done? What is he doing for any of this? Honestly, it is just disaster after disaster after disaster. And the longer Sunak waits, the worse it is going to be. Because what's he doing about the NHS? You know, you've had a defector specifically defect from the Tories over the crisis that's in the NHS. What is Rishi Sunak doing about that crisis? What is he doing about the complete lack of funding for public services that the public are crying out for? Nothing. But yeah, that's it. Consider that threat of a early summer election deployed. You only get to do it once. And if it is true that they're going to go for an autumn election, what's going to happen between now and then? I think it is all going to be dependent on what happens at these upcoming local elections. If they are really bad, Sunak is going to find himself in with no option but to. And then depending on that, how much he can spin those results, we'll see. But it all depends on what the mood of the Tory party becomes after these upcoming local elections. But I can tell you, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good at all. And what have we said before about the Tory party? When they panic, they do not make good decisions. So, oh boy, yeah. Next Friday into the weekend, gonna be fun. Gonna be very fun. Gonna be very fun indeed. So, as always, please remember to click on the like, the share button, and of course, we'll see you all next time.